Hi, I'm Coach Nate, and I thought I'd make a Tracer guide for all of you who want to learn how to play Tracer. This is for people that are from beginner to maybe intermediate. So I'm going to go over basic approach to Tracer and some different drills you can go through to get better at Tracer things. So let's get right to it. So first of all, I want to go into Tracer's design. So Tracer, when played well, is kind of similar to a really annoying fly. One that is hard to hit, it is very mobile, and it is continuously annoying you. Where you can't kill it, it's just bothering the hell out of you, and every time you swing at it, it evades you. So try to be that way as much as possible, and I'm going to talk about ways to do that in a little bit. But with that in mind, you want to focus on ways to maximize your survival over everything else most of the time. So if you're dying a lot as Tracer, you're missing her main point. And it's better. And I didn't get this until I watched Surefour's aim and movement guide a while ago. When it was first released, and for some reason it didn't click on my brain until I heard him say it, and then it struck home to me, which is, as Tracer, you can always blink away, get your blinks back. You can go grab a health pack if you have to, and then come back in a few more seconds. That it doesn't take that much time, and as often as you're doing that, if you do that instead of versus dying, then you're going to have a lot more time in battle, a lot more chances to pressure enemy and do all the Tracer things, and have a lot more value in the game. So that's the first thing I want to talk about with Tracer. The second thing is Tracer is meant to have information and to abuse having informational advantage. So, for instance, Tracer has the ability to get in position before everybody else, so she should know what the team comp is on the enemy team and where they're positioned and what they're doing before everyone else. And you can use that advantage to set yourself up, but also you can communicate that to your team, and look for weaknesses in their positioning and their comp picks and prioritize what you're doing or what your team could be doing ahead of time. So that's one way that Tracer can have informational advantage. But another way is Tracer's basic design, how she approaches a 1v1 or fighting her enemies. See, Tracer has her 3 blinks in her recall, which allows her to blink anywhere she wants around her enemies, basically, if she's in a close enough range. So what you need to do with this is, instead of blinking in front of your enemy, always blink out of line of sight. Because if you blink off their screen, then you're always going to have information advantage, meaning you know where you're going. When you get to a certain level of proficiency with Tracer, you will know where you're blinking and be able to adjust where you're aiming, so you're aiming immediately on your enemy target. So at all times you'll know exactly where they are, but they will not know where you are. And during that time where it takes them to figure out where you've blinked to, you have free chances to be shooting them while they cannot shoot you. And the better you get at doing this, the more often that you are going to be annoying as hell and putting a lot of pressure on the enemy, because you'll be blinking all around them, and they'll always be trying to figure out where the heck you just went, while you're damaging them the whole time. And so let's take a look at some of the ways that you can do that, or kind of what does that look like when you're doing that well. What you want to be doing is blinking out of their line of sight. So you can blink behind them, or you can blink to their side, either side of them. And the idea is that you want to keep them spinning, and always blink in such a way that they can't see you. So off their screen. So yeah, you can, if you blink to their side, you have some advantages, that you may not have if you blink behind them. The one specific advantage is a lot of people strafe left or right in the game. They don't, move around in a circular pattern, or many of them. So, especially as you get higher up in, as you advance in rank in the game, people use strafe patterns, left and right strafe patterns more often. So if they're strafing left and right, and you're to their side, they're going to be moving in a straight line in front of you, so you can shoot them easier. All right, so here's a top-down view of the map of King's Row, and I want you to pretend you're on offense. And the idea here is, how can you play Tracer in a way that you can be most effective? So say your team's spawning right now. I'm going to talk about something I saw while coaching a player recently, how they approach playing Tracer, and kind of some of what they went through. So their pathing, or what they did when the spawn gates opened, is they went with their team right into the choke, and they took some damage here, and they ended up blinking, I believe, and they took some more damage while being over here. And within a span of a few seconds, they ended up recalling back behind their team, and basically they used most of their kit and got nothing out of it and had to wait. What you can do differently as Tracer is obscure yourself until you want to be seen. So take a different route. Okay, so the enemy team was right there, and their line of sight through this choke is, right there. They're waiting for anyone to be showing themselves so they can take damage. So what you want to do is not show yourself until you want to be seen. So just come up from the side, or you can even take a more direct, what would be a more direct path, but still not be visible, right? I guess. Something like that, right? And then you can wait here, and you have options, right? You can wait for your team to push in. So we'll put your team in blue for fun. Say your team comes in here and is fighting with the enemy team, so that they're at least looking at your team. And you could try to blink into, we'll use yellow for you. Try to blink into what I believe is called the hotel over there, or you can take some other paths, right? So another option you can do, even before your team gets up there. So say your team's not there, you can take a different route in the battle. So you can come up through behind the bus here, and then you can blink out of line of sight to here. And then at which point, you can wait for your team to push in and either blink that way, or even if you want, you could also just show yourself slightly and blink that way immediately, so they'll know you're there, but they'll have little time to react to you being visible. So you can take that flank path. But your other option is to blink here, with the idea of coming into the movie theater and going on to high ground, which, on high ground, you can either blink onto this perch here and up into the alley, or you can come around the back, drop down and come around the back this way. So you have other things you can do if you go that way. But all of these, if you look at all these different paths you can take, and what you're doing is you're limiting the enemy's chances to shoot you at all, and you're trying to obscure the vision of you. So you are controlling information here. They don't know where you are and what you're doing, if possible, and they have very limited options. And And if you think about what we were talking about earlier with purpose, Tracer's purpose and her design of being hard to hit and also having informational advantage and well, all the things that we were talking about earlier, that's how you play her within a team environment against the other team to maximize the value there. We also need to discuss when is the best time to go into battle as Tracer, because a lot of new Tracers struggle with this. Well, the best time to go in is when the tanks on either team are actually fighting. So you want both teams to be engaged in some manner or another. And why I say you want to wait for the tanks to actually be fighting is because that's when the battle's going on. That's when people are committing their resources, their attention. They're more committed to being in a fight and have less ability to just easily turn around and shoot you as Tracer. So you'll want to use your ability to get in a position where you can come in from the side or from the back or some other place and be in that position already and wait for your tanks to be fighting with the enemy tank and doing something. And that's your chance to go in. Otherwise, like what a lot of new Tracers do is they get into the position they're trying to come from, then they blink in and start doing whatever Tracer stuff they're trying to do. But all 6 of the enemy team are just chilling out, waiting for something to happen, and you are that thing. They can all just turn and shoot you, and you only have 150 HP. You're gonna die in like 2 seconds, or not even that, if you try to do that. It'll be much harder for you, and you'll be working your butt off to use all of your mobility and to be evasive as possible or whatever. And use all your blinks and everything in a short amount of time just to evade that damage, and you're not going to get a lot done, most likely. So if you wait, though, for both teams to be doing something and to be actually engaged in such a way that they can't ignore each other anymore, like if both tank lines are pushed together and are actually fighting, at that point, there's less of an option for them to turn around and do something else. It's going to be harder. And because they're forced to deal with one another, then they're going to have a harder time dealing with you. So that's what you need to do as Tracer. All right, the last concept to talk about for Tracer is understanding your priorities. So generally, you're going to be thinking about team composition, at least for the other team, and think about who you can kill or who you can pressure so that they use their abilities. Most often you're going to, so a good rule of thumb is you're not going to really focus tanks most of the time unless you're trying to get your pulse bomb up. I mean, you can pressure Reinhardt and kill him, but that I would not suggest going after tanks as your first priority. Oftentimes you can go after DPS and healers though, and you're going to have, it's not always going to be the same choice. It's not so cut and dry as that. But we'll talk about some of these characters that you can go after. So you can go after Zen. Zen is often a nice target because he has very low mobility and he has a large enough hitbox where he's easy to kill, and so that makes him a good choice for you. Ana at times can be a good choice because she has low mobility, and you can force her to use, you can outplay her kit and force her to use her kit. So if you don't kill Ana, you can still get rid of her sleep dart and get rid of her nade so that she can't anti your team and she doesn't use it on anybody else but herself. And so she loses a lot of her value of what she can do. And after she uses that, you can kill her or somebody else can kill her. And at that whole time, if you distract her, she's not healing your team too. So she's got to deal with trying to shoot you, and oftentimes she'll be healing the tanks because that's, she has large healing output. So she's well suited for that. So you take heals away from the front line and other places by focusing her. These other characters are more difficult on the healing side of things to focus, but you can still do that. and you can either focus them to try to get them to use their kit, or you can actually kill them, or you can just pressure them so they don't heal the front line. Those are the goals you can have. So let's go to the DPS here. You can deal with most of the people on the enemy team, no matter what they're playing as Tracer, when it comes to 1v1ing DPS, depending. You just have to think about how to outplay them. So Ashe has her ability to get away from you by her coach gun, and she can pressure you pretty hard with dynamite, but you can, as long as you have your recall, you can recall the dynamite. And you can also try to pressure her to get her to use all this stuff and just outplay her, outsmart her, and then go in. Doomfist, you can outplay him pretty good. It should be in your favor if you understand how his abilities cause him to move, and all of his abilities are mostly telegraphed, and you're gonna have to learn about when a situation is in favor for him. Like if you try to attack him around a corner, he might have his right click available to punch you, and you got to think about is there a wall right behind you, etc. You don't want to take unnecessary damage while engaging him. Like I wouldn't go into a small hallway or tunnel or something to take him out when possible. Genji, you can annoy. You can kind of just pester him to force him to use his deflect, and you can get, if you practice against Genjis, especially like I use a lot of aim arena. I like to practice against people there, so you can learn when Genjis like to blink, dash in, and outplay him there. Hanzo, he can hit you somewhat easily with his large projectiles, but you can at least pester him from different angles. He's sometimes harder to play against, but you can still do it. Junkrat, don't approach him from the front. Always try to come behind him and take a different path. Generally, a Junkrat will be spamming a certain area. So he's area denial to a particular, like a doorway or one open place, like a general area. But if you can come from a side, you can put a lot of pressure on him that way, and maybe one clip him. Whenever he's in the air, he's such an easy target, and you can blink all around him. He has a lot of Junkrats think that they're amazing once they leave the ground. And for Tracer, they're fresh meat. So, the thing is, though, you got to pay attention to Junkrat's concussion blasts or concussion mines, because they can mess you up pretty good, and you got to watch out for his traps too. But and a smart Junkrat, will always be difficult, but most of the time you can definitely give Junkrat a lot of trouble. McCree, you got to learn how to bait out his flashbang, and that's going to be something that's fun to do, but also you're gonna have to learn that. Suggest trying to go against a lot of McCrees whenever you can, maybe in deathmatch or free for all. Mei can mess you up with a right click if she gets lucky. Those projectiles are kind of large, and she can also freeze you, but most of the time you can outplay a Mei as far as when it comes to avoiding her kit and forcing her to use her kit in different ways, which is useful to your team because Mei is such a pain to deal with anyways. She may not be easy for you to kill, but you can at least pressure her pretty good. Pharah depends on how low to the ground she is, but you can mess her up pretty decently and avoid her rockets by blinking around them. Reaper, you can mess a Reaper up because Reaper needs to be close range to do damage. You can always make sure he's not and pressure the hell out of him. He's not going to be able to kill you most of the time unless you get right up into his face. So take those 1v1s when you get a chance and find him isolated and pressure him, make him wraith out. Reapers should definitely be afraid of you. Soldier is a harder matchup. You're gonna have to, like, if he gets a rocket off on you, he can easily kill you. So you're gonna have to figure out how to outplay his rocket. Then he has his healing, his biotic field, which makes him. It's kind of difficult to heal him through that too. So you got a lot of things to outplay, like to force him to use. But if you notice he's used those things, then go in on him. You could probably take him out, or at least cause him to run away somewhere. Sombra, just don't get hacked by her. You can pressure her. I wouldn't be chasing Sombras all the time, but she's not as scary as some might say. You know, like, people are going to be afraid of being hacked, but if you have a good reaction time, you should be able to avoid that most of the time. Now you have Symetra. Symetra shouldn't be able to do much to you, as long as you figure out where her turrets are and you're not going in. Her right clicks are pretty amazing for what kind of value, you know, like the amount of value they provide. So you need to not go into those. They're huge and they travel slow, so they're kind of area denial. But her range is not that large, and you can basically blink around her, and a lot of sims can't aim with a crap. So that should be to your advantage. Torb is kind of annoying. You have to get rid of his turret. You want to get close range. He has a lot of armor, so he's not as fun to 1v1. And then Widow, you know, she can almost shoot you somewhere around the diaphragm, and it counts as a headshot, at least when I play against Widow. So you got to be careful for that. But if you can get in close, you have a much better chance. Just don't get hit by her. Try to avoid taking damage from her mine, so that you don't have to recall it early and pressure, you know, take some pressure off yourself. So that's, and she's an okay target if you can get in close to her, but you want to especially get her when she's zoomed in, because she doesn't have line of sight on you, and if you can sneak up on her, she doesn't move all that much, so you can just kind of one clip her if you can take her by surprise. And then I'm not going to go into tanks as much, but with Tracer, the main point here is you need to learn who you can kill, how to pressure their kit out of them so that they have less use to your team. So an enemy team with less abilities have less available to them to respond to your team, and that makes your team more likely to win. So that's a good goal, to try to force the other team to use all their abilities, so your team can have a chance to win and have ways to have advantage in fight. Because if they can use their abilities to respond to what the other enemy team has, then that just gives them so many more options. The other thing I should talk about here is, so we've talked about characters and kits and things that you can prioritize. You also want to take a look at positioning of the enemy team. Think about, is someone isolated from their team? Can somebody from their team somehow help them out? So, you know, do they have, like, for instance, if the enemy team is running like a Lucio and a Myra, that means they have short range healing. That these characters have to be close to the rest of their team in order to heal them. So that means you could probably pressure somebody who's like a Widowmaker. They won't be able to get to help her very often. If you get a chance to get her in a 1v1, you might win that, especially if you surprise her. You can look at things like, okay, maybe they have this McCree that keeps on trying to go flank. So if you can outplay his flashbang and catch, you might be able to go kill him. Same thing with like maybe a Doomfist. If you can get a Doomfist before he goes in, then maybe you can force him to use his abilities. You can kill him because he's separated from his team, and you can outplay his entire kit. If unless he gets lucky and surprises you somehow, whatever. But you should have the advantage there. So he has a harder time doing something in that game. Well, I think you get the idea. That's enough. If you have any questions about this concept, you can ask me, and I'll be happy to talk more about it. How do you go from not really knowing how to play Tracer, like and what drills can you use to get better at her, and what can you do over time to become proficient? So I would start first with aiming with Tracer, and I would do it at different ranges. So like start up close, then move to like something that's still slightly close range, then go to like maybe medium, and then, you know, out to here as maximum maybe. That buff to that slightly recent buff to her makes it so she can still kind of be effective at like a range like this. This is crazy, but yeah. So you can start with stationary targets, then you can go to moving targets. You can try jumping, but the best place to be aiming with Tracer, because like, let's look at her, the spread pattern of her gun. See how it's kind of like a circular range there. So aim at people's necks, especially at like with squishy characters. Oops. Anyways, especially with squishy characters, because they're harder to hit anyways. And if you're aiming at their neck, because what you want to imagine, if you're aiming center, somewhere like at least half your bullets are going to be going into their head, and shooting them in the neck also counts as a headshot. So only a few of your bullets are going to be hitting their body, but the most bullets will be going in their head if you're shooting them in their neck because of the spread. But also note, for 200 HP target, you can still kill them by shooting them in the body. So if you have trouble with headshots or whatever, but you don't have to do that. All right. Next thing to talk about with Tracer is the next drill is doing 180 degree turns and 90 degree turns. So I like to, in the practice range, I like to use these lines. So you can do 90 degree turns, and then you can do 180 degree turns. Whoops. Looking at the lines, right? Once you get that down, you can practice doing. So you need to also practice Tracer's blink distance, and you don't have to do all of this all the time. I would start with some of this, work on it specifically for a short amount of time until you start to get better at it, and then move to the next step. So maybe start with Tracer aim, then go and, you know, just follow right along this path I'm showing you here. And as you when you get proficient at one thing, then go and focus on the next thing for like another week or week and a half or whatever, however long it takes. Next thing to focus on is Tracer blink distance. So you want to know how far you're blinking, and hopefully let's try blink melee. So right about there. And as you see, I did a 180 when I did that. But the reason why is if you spin around when you melee, anybody in wherever you turn, as long as you cross a character and do it quick enough, you're going to melee them, because you just melee once, and anybody in that general area will receive the melee. So if there were 6 enemies around you and you spun in this quick circle while doing a melee, you'd hit all 6 of them, one melee. But anyways, you want to get used to that blink melee range. If I had actually blinked towards them, that would hit, but I blinked off of them. Once you get good at that, you can try doing like blinking to the side and shooting them. So this character, so you're combining that 90 degree turn with the blink range. Or you can do 180s. So you want to know where to blink behind them, or in front of them. And then after that, you can start trying to attach pulse bombs to people. So with pulse bombs, you can practice just in general, like without blinking or doing anything. But with pulse bombs also, I guess I'll have to build one. But you can practice blinking into people and doing a pulse bomb. because that if you do that, it'll just basically shoot straight out from you. The other thing you can practice with false bombs is doing what we did with shooting somebody from the side with a 90-degree turn or the 180 turn. So if you get good at blink distance, then you can use that to help you. You can practice that as well. And all of this might take you a while, but just do it in a gradual fashion. So if I was going to start Tracer and didn't have any ability to play her at all right now, I would just focus for a week or so on my aim. I would do that. I would first get good at targets that do not move. Then I would move to the strafing targets, and then finally I would go to Aim Arena, where there's just a bunch of people. It's a custom mode, by the way. It's in custom games, and people always have Aim Arena custom games going. So find one with decent connectivity and just go in there and focus on people at different ranges and with different strafe patterns, etc., and just get used to shooting people and getting better aim no matter what they're doing. And that's also good for 1v1. So later on, after you get good at all this other stuff we've just discussed, or maybe once you get proficient with, at least with your aim and some of the other Tracer stuff here, go in there and practice against movement patterns and practice against specific characters so that you can start outplaying 1v1s. And that's the thing, like as we discussed with all the characters earlier, who you can be a good matchup against and who you struggle with and whose kit you have to outplay. Well, you need to practice outplaying as many people as possible. Learn their kits, how their kits work, what range they're effective at versus you, and really get a good feel for how to always have an advantage, or at least not play in a way that you're at a disadvantage. And I suggest Aim Arena for that. I also suggest using Deathmatch or Try Hard Free For All. And eventually that should help you in 1v1s for your games. And get comfortable playing against several of these characters and knowing how to force them to use their kit without being at a disadvantage there. So that goes through most of what you need to do as Tracer. A lot of the rest of it is experience and getting used to what you can do to really press in, and learning where you need to back out and what's not to your advantage. A lot of this is experience. But that I feel that I've laid out the steps that you need to go through, at least to start from knowing nothing about Tracer to getting to Novice and having a possibility of not feeling like you're approaching her wrong. It should help a lot of you to play her better than if you didn't have this guide to begin with and you're just starting out with her now. At least that's what I hope. If you find this guide useful, I'd be happy to know. Let me know if I've been able to make your life better with this, because that always makes me happy. And then, you can let me know now. You can let me know down the line. If you have any questions, go ahead and hit me up, and I'll be happy to answer them. All right. And I'm also going to put some guides or different things that I found useful about Tracer, some resources down below in the description. I'm Coach Nate, and if you have a chance, go on and head over to Overwatch Educators. It's a subreddit designed so that only people that are Master's rank in Overwatch can create new educational content. So hopefully you can find something useful over there for yourself. I've got a lot of VOD reviews. There's some great educational guides and other VOD reviews by Ace of Spades, which is top 500 main tank. And there's some a list of resources there as well. And hopefully in the future I can continue to grow that subreddit and get some other people on there and get you some more content. But I'd be happy to have some new members. Thanks for listening to everything I said today. And as always, I'm here if you want to reach out to me. I'll put my socials in the description below, and you can hit me up. And I also do VOD reviews for people and periodically post them on this subreddit. So if you're somebody who wants a VOD review, then I can help you out that way too. And currently I do that for free, so that's something fun you can explore if you need to, or would like to, I mean. Thanks again for watching this guide. If you have another, say you have another character that you want to learn how to play and there's not enough guides out there for you, let me know and I can try to help you out, especially if I get a lot of people demanding it. And I wish you well while climbing in Overwatch.